You people are always hiding something, the officer growled as he forced the young teacher to stand against her own car. Don't make me strip search you right here, in broad daylight, in a school parking lot. No warrant, no reason, just the color of her skin. This isn't fiction. This is what racial profiling looks like in 2025. If this made your blood boil, you're not alone. Watch till the end and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave your thoughts in the comments, because silence is no longer an option. On a quiet Thursday afternoon in suburban Georgia, the parking lot behind Eastbrook Elementary was nearly empty. The sun had dipped just low enough to cast long shadows across the asphalt, painting orange stripes along the rows of parked cars. School had let out an hour ago and most of the staff and students were already gone. A few late pickups lingered near the front office, and a janitor wheeled a trash bin toward the loading dock. Alicia Thomas moved with the rhythm of routine. She cradled a stack of folders in one arm and carried her laptop bag in the other, keys jingling softly in her hand. As she walked toward her silver Prius, she wore a dark green blouse tucked neatly into beige slacks, her ID badge still clipped to her waist. Her hair was pulled back into a tight bun, and her expression was calm, almost meditative. It had been a long day, 2 parent conferences, a fire drill, and a difficult math lesson with her 5th graders. She was ready to go home. She had just reached her car and was unlocking the driver's side door when a police cruiser pulled up sharply behind her. The sudden screech of tires on the pavement made her flinch. The vehicle came to a stop at an awkward angle, blocking her in. A moment later, the door swung open, and a stocky man in a dark blue uniform stepped out. "Excuse me, ma'am," the officer called out, his voice flat but firm. "I need you to step away from your vehicle." Alicia turned slowly, confused. "Is there a problem, officer?" "License and registration," he said, ignoring her question. "And keep your hands where I can see them." Her brows furrowed. "I'm a teacher here. I'm just leaving for the day. I can show you my ID." "Don't move," the officer snapped, now standing just a few feet from her. His name tag read R. Talley. His jaw was clenched, and his eyes flicked between her face and her vehicle. Alicia raised her hand slowly. "My license is in my purse. May I get it?" Ron Talley didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked around the nearly empty lot, then back at her with a sneer. "What are you doing out here alone after school hours?" he asked, suspicion thick in his voice. "I was finishing paperwork and waiting for my husband to pick me up," she replied, her tone calm. "He's running a little late." "That right?" Talley said, stepping closer. "Seems to me you were sitting in your car with the engine running for an unusual amount of time." "I haven't even started the car yet," she said, glancing toward the door she had just unlocked. "You pulled up before I got in." Talley didn't respond. Instead, he moved toward her vehicle and peered through the window. "Mind if I take a look inside the vehicle?" "Yes, I do mind," Alicia said. "Unless you have probable cause or a warrant, I'd prefer you didn't." That was the moment the atmosphere shifted. Talley's mouth twisted into something between a smirk and a scowl. "You think you know the law, huh?" "I know my rights," Alicia said firmly. "I teach civics as part of our curriculum." "Well, then this'll be a great real-life lesson for you," he muttered, pulling out a small flashlight and gesturing toward the trunk. "Pop the trunk." Alicia held her ground. "No, officer. I'm not consenting to a search." Talley stepped closer, close enough that Alicia could see the sweat glistening on his temple. "Ma'am, I'm asking nicely. Don't make this harder than it has to be." "Harder for who?" she said, not backing down. For a long second, they stared at each other. Talley's face hardened. "You fit the description of a suspect we've been tracking in the area." Alicia blinked. "Excuse me?" "Female. African American. Early 30s. Driving a Prius. Acting suspiciously." "You just described every black woman in this neighborhood who works late," she said quietly. He ignored the comment. "I'm going to ask you one more time to step away from the vehicle and open the trunk." She crossed her arms, gripping her car keys tightly in her palm. "I'm going to call my husband." Talley snorted. "Go ahead. Maybe he's got something to say about your behavior." She pulled out her phone. her hands steady despite the adrenaline pumping through her veins. She tapped a number labeled M. Thomas, home, and held the phone to her ear. After a few rings, a voice picked up, calm and authoritative. "Martin Thomas." "Hey," Alicia said. "I need you to come to the school parking lot. Now." Tally tilted his head, amused. "Calling backup?" Alicia didn't answer. She ended the call and slipped the phone back into her pocket. "Like I said," she repeated, "I'm a teacher here. I have nothing to hide, but unless you can explain what crime you suspect me of committing, I suggest you let me be." Tally stepped back half an inch. "You're being difficult. That's reason enough to detain you." Alicia took a deep breath. She looked past him toward the exit of the lot, silently hoping to see her husband's SUV turning the corner. Tally was reaching for his radio when he froze. A dark SUV had just pulled in, gliding smoothly into the lot. The vehicle came to a stop a few yards away. The driver's door opened, and out stepped a tall black man in a gray suit and polished shoes. He adjusted his cufflinks and approached with measured, deliberate steps. "Everything okay here, officer?" the man asked. "Sir, this is an active police investigation," Tally began, posture stiffening. The man held up a badge, not local, but state level. The emblem glinted gold in the fading light. "My name is Martin Thomas, Director of Internal Affairs for the Georgia Department of Public Safety." Tally's eyes widened. Martin didn't give him time to speak. "I received an emergency call from my wife. That would be the woman you're currently detaining without cause. Care to explain yourself, officer?" The parking lot fell into silence. Even the janitor had paused by the dumpsters, watching the scene unfold. Alicia stepped away from her car, walking slowly toward her husband, her eyes locked on Tally's face. The officer looked from Alicia to Martin and back again, the color draining from his face. Martin's voice was calm, but each word landed like a gavel. "This is your final moment of discretion, Officer Tally. Choose wisely." Officer Tally took a step back, his mouth slightly ajar, trying to regain control of the situation. For a man who prided himself on authority, the presence of someone from internal affairs, especially at the state level, wasn't just inconvenient, it was terrifying. "I was conducting a standard inquiry," he muttered. "She was acting suspiciously, sitting in her car with the engine off. That's a known tactic for surveillance." Martin raised an eyebrow. "Surveillance? Of what elementary school children?" Tally shifted uncomfortably. "She refused to cooperate when I asked to search her vehicle." Martin's tone remained steady, as is her constitutional right. Alicia stood quietly beside her husband, her chin lifted, her gaze unwavering. She hadn't spoken since Martin's arrival, but her silence carried power. Ron Tally could feel the control slipping from his hands like water through a sieve. "You said she fit a suspect's description," Martin continued. "May I see the bulletin? The report? Anything to support that claim?" Tally didn't respond. Martin took a slow step forward. "You've been on our radar for months, Officer Tally. This little scene here? It's not random. It's confirmation." "Sir." "Don't lie to me," Martin interrupted, the warmth gone from his voice. "We've reviewed the complaints. We've analyzed the traffic stop data. You're 15 times more likely search a black driver than a white one." 15? You think that's normal?" Tally's face tightened. "I enforce the law." "No," Martin said coldly. "You enforce your bias." The words hung in the air, sharp and undeniable. Across the lot, a second vehicle arrived, a black state sedan. Two agents stepped out, both in plain clothes, their badges already in hand. They moved with silent precision, walking directly toward Martin, who gave them a brief nod. "Take his weapon," Martin said. Tally's eyes widened. "What?" "You're being placed on administrative suspension pending formal investigation. Surrender your firearm and badge." "You can't do this," Tally barked. "I was doing my job." One of the agents stepped forward. "Sir, place your service weapon on the ground and step away." Tally hesitated. His eyes darted to Alicia, then back to Martin. His breathing was shallow now, panic creeping into his voice. This is a setup. She called you. She planned this. Martin didn't flinch. She didn't plan anything. She did what any innocent person would do. She called for help. You don't get to rewrite this, Tally spat. I'm the officer. I'm the one protecting people like her. Martin's eyes narrowed. People like her? There it was. The mask had cracked. The agents moved in. Tally finally relented, unholstering his weapon with trembling hands and setting it on the ground before stepping back. One of the agents collected it and secured it in a lockbox. The other took Tally's badge and clipped it into an evidence bag. You will be contacted by the Office of Professional Standards within 48 hours, the agent said calmly. Until then, you are relieved of all law enforcement duties. Tally stood in stunned silence, his jaw tight, his pride bleeding out on the pavement. Alicia finally spoke. Officer Tally, I hope you understand this isn't about revenge. It's about accountability. He didn't respond. He couldn't. Martin turned toward Alicia. His face softened as he placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. You okay? She nodded slowly. I will be. Martin turned back to the agents. Let's wrap this up. Notify the local precinct. I want a formal report submitted by 9 a.m. tomorrow. Yes, sir. As Tally was escorted toward the waiting vehicle, Alicia turned and walked toward her car. She opened the door and placed her bags inside, her hands moving with a steady rhythm. The parking lot was quiet again. Martin joined her, leaning slightly against the hood of the Prius. I wish I could say this was over. It never is, she said quietly. He looked at her. You didn't have to let it get this far. You could have called me right away. She looked back at him, her eyes clear. If I had, we wouldn't have seen the real him. We needed him to show his true colors. Martin exhaled slowly. You're braver than I am, Alicia. No, she said, just tired of being silent. They stood there for a moment, not needing to say anything else. The agents finished securing Tally in the back of the unmarked sedan. One of them returned briefly and handed Martin a manila envelope. This contains the dashcam footage and audio from Tally's patrol car, the agent said. He didn't disable it. Martin took the envelope, nodded, and tucked it under his arm. Make sure it's backed up to the department server. Already done, sir. The agent returned to the vehicle. The sedan pulled out of the lot, disappearing down the tree-lined road. Alicia opened the passenger door of the Prius and slipped inside. Martin walked around and took the driver's seat. The car started with a soft hum. As they pulled out of the parking lot, Alicia looked back through the rearview mirror at the empty space where Tally's cruiser had once stood. A space cleared of arrogance, of abuse, of fear. She turned forward, her voice steady. Do you think they'll believe me? Martin kept his eyes on the road. They'll believe the facts, and this time, we have them all. Alicia rested her head against the seat. Her fingers relaxed. The wind outside rustled through the trees. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she could exhale, not because justice had been served, but because, finally, it had started. The following Monday morning, the halls of Eastbrook Elementary were alive with the usual chatter, shoes squeaking on polished tile, lockers clanging open and shut, laughter echoing from classrooms. To the students, it was just another day, but for Alicia Thomas, something felt different. She walked into her classroom at 7:15 a.m., coffee in hand, her lesson plans neatly stacked on her desk. The scent of fresh pencils and laminated posters filled the air. She paused by the window, looking out toward the parking lot where only days earlier she had been humiliated. Now, it was just a row of parked cars and a light breeze rustling through the trees. Her fellow teachers greeted her with a mixture of warmth and quiet admiration. No one said much. They didn't have to. The story had traveled fast without her telling a soul. Word of Officer Tally's suspension had circulated through staff meetings, PTA whispers, and local law enforcement channels. The details remained confidential, but everyone knew Alicia had stood tall in the face of injustice and hadn't let it break her. At 8:01 a.m., her fifth graders filed into the room. backpacks thudding onto the floor, voices rising in excitement. She smiled as they settled into their seats. "Morning, Miss Thomas." "Good morning, everyone," she replied with a calm, warm tone. "Let's start with something simple today." As she moved to the whiteboard, she noticed a sticky note on her desk. In careful handwriting, it read, "Thank you for being brave. Anonymous." Her fingers lingered on the note for a moment. Then she tucked it gently into the front pocket of her lesson plan binder and began writing the day's agenda on the board. Meanwhile, across town at the Georgia Department of Public Safety headquarters, Martin Thomas was reviewing preliminary findings from the Internal Affairs investigation. The reports were damning. Not only had Officer Talley violated multiple protocols during the stop, but he had also been the subject of 3 prior complaints, none of which had been properly followed up by his department. "Looks like this rabbit hole's deeper than we thought," one of Martin's analysts remarked, handing him another folder. Martin nodded. Good. That means it's worth digging through." Later that afternoon, Martin returned home early for the first time in weeks. He found Alicia sitting on their porch swing, grading papers in the golden afternoon light. She looked up as he approached, her expression softening. He handed her a sealed envelope. "The suspension's been upgraded. He's now under formal review by the state attorney's office. They'll likely move forward with charges." Alicia opened the envelope, scanned the notice, and let out a breath. "Good," she said quietly. "That's a start." Martin sat beside her. For a moment, neither of them said anything. "Do you regret what we did?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, it had to be done. If not for me, then for the next woman who looks like me, who might not have a husband with a badge." Martin looked out at the quiet street. "You know, there's talk about training reform, mandatory bias screening for local precincts." She raised an eyebrow. "Talk or action?" He smiled faintly. "Action, if I have anything to say about it." The swing creaked gently as it moved. The sky was starting to turn a soft blue-gray, the evening settling in. Back at the precinct where Talley had once strutted through the halls with smug confidence, his nameplate had been removed from his locker. The officers who had once nodded at him now looked away, some out of shame, others out of fear they'd be next. And in the community he had once patrolled with unchecked authority, people were starting to speak up, quietly at first, then louder. Stories of mistreatment, illegal searches, intimidation tactics, stories long buried were now being taken seriously. All because one woman refused to be silent. A week later, Alicia was invited to speak at a local town hall meeting on community policing. She hesitated at first, but Martin encouraged her. "You've already done the hard part," he said. "Now you just have to tell the truth." Standing at the podium in front of over 100 residents, city officials, and a few uniformed officers, Alicia looked calm but resolute. She told them everything. Not about her husband, not about the investigation, just about that day in the parking lot. About how it felt, what it meant, and why it couldn't happen again. "I didn't raise my voice," she told them. "I didn't record anything. I didn't fight back. I didn't have to, because the truth was enough." The room was silent for several seconds after she finished. Then the applause began, quiet at first, then growing. Afterward, people approached her, teachers, parents, even one young officer who admitted quietly that her words had made him rethink how he approached his role. As she and Martin walked out into the evening air, Alicia looked up at the stars blinking into view. "Think we made a difference?" she asked. Martin squeezed her hand. "You did." And though there would always be more battles to fight, more truths to expose, that night, as they drove home under the soft glow of streetlights, Alicia allowed herself a small smile. Because for once, justice hadn't just been an idea. It had been real, tangible, and finally visible. In a world where silence often protects injustice, standing your ground with dignity can be the loudest form of resistance. This story reminds us that racism doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it whispers through authority, disguised as routine. But courage, even when quiet, can spark real change. If this message hit home for you the way it did for us, Take a second to like the video, drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every one, and subscribe to our storytelling channel. We're building a community that believes in justice, one story at a time, and we'd love to have you in it.